Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director here at USTA Florida. In today's episode, we're introducing a brand new program at USTA Florida to help expand and activate our advocacy throughout the state. Joining me today is USTA Florida Past President Dana Andrews, and also USTA Florida's new Director of Advocacy, Ducey, who will be outlining the new program, why advocacy is so important, and why there are key issues in the state that our local advocacy projects will help us address. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast. For more information on our advocacy effort, check out USTAFlorida.com and feel free to visit us on social media and drop a comment or a question in the chat if there are additional ways that we can help you advocate for tennis in your local communities. Dana and Christine, it is such a joy for me to be with both of you today and to talk about a brand new program that we are launching here at USTA Florida to help us expand our advocacy. Dana, I wanted to start with you today because as past president of USTA Florida, you actually played a very big role in our advocacy efforts at Riverside Park in Vero Beach. I wanted to just start by asking, what did you learn from that experience about the importance of advocacy, and maybe what surprised you when we were going through that project?
Well, I love getting to share about this project. I mean, I'm not lying. I just got goosebumps when you just brought it up. For me, in terms of what the importance of advocacy, that truly was that tennis community coming forward and saying, we have a need here. We're concerned about losing these courts. We would love to see what you could do for us and with us. And so, number one, clearly that sent the message to us as an organization that advocacy starts with the tennis community. No question. And then in terms of what surprised me or what I learned was, number one, I really thought about this, that I learned that we haven't been as best we can in our messaging in terms of what USTA Florida can do for a tennis community. We're there to partner with you. And I think that became very clear to us as an organization that we needed to get that message out more. And in getting that message out, for me, I learned advocacy takes time. It is not a snap and it's handled. I mean, the meetings with the rec department, the meetings with city council, the meetings with the tennis community itself. We happen to do town halls. I think, Laura, you did a radio talk. We did a newspaper article together. You know, those types of things. And so I guess I learned that you do have to stay the course. Don't get discouraged, but do realize that you are talking about a community. And our goal to me is to let them know what we can do for you. And that's why we're here. We're here to make a facility best in practice, the best it can be for where it's located. So the process from beginning to end was a little nerve-wracking at times. You had to have some tough skin at times, but again, we knew we were in the right place at the right time. And that tennis community, again, I cannot thank them enough for the support, being vocal about what they saw, because we never probably would have known about it. So all of it together was really a positive experience.
I love that you shared all of that. And the main thing about it, that was a 2-year project. A lot of these advocacy efforts, they do take a long time. It's a marathon. And I think that was a perfect example of, you can have your ups and your downs, but ultimately it's that consistency and the community showing up time and time again that a lot of times is what makes the difference of getting you across the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Christina, I want to come to you for a second. You been an avid tennis player. You've been a volunteer leader in our section. You've been a staff director. That's your role now. And you've also run a local CTA, which is sort of a very broad perspective on all the different ingredients that happen in our ecosystem. So my question for you is, what common ideas do you take from each of those roles that could help with our advocacy? And how do you see those parts of our organization working together now as we introduce this new program?
Well, I think one of the main things that I've learned is really the huge impact that an individual or a small group of players can have in their community. When a group of motivated people come together, right, there's really no stopping them, and they can really move the needle in terms of what's offered to them in their communities recreationally. And we all, I think, because we love sports and tennis particularly, we recognize how wonderful it is for all of us and all the great things that it does for us. I think we just need to get out there and share it more. And most municipalities and HOAs that I've really come in contact with over the course of time, they really do want to listen to what the people want. But tennis thus far has been really kind of quiet. And in my opinion, I think we need to bring our voices to the table a little earlier. I think sometimes we get to the conversation a little bit late in the game, and maybe we can get into those conversations a little earlier when they're considering important subjects that really matter in the tennis community and when those decisions are being made. So, I think when people approach their local governments or municipalities with solid data in their hands, they can really influence what happens in their community. And I think they would be really surprised at the impact that they can make. So, I mean, in terms of the things that I've learned over the past 20 plus years that I've been involved in tennis, I think that that's really it. The difference that you really can make if you just spend a little time and effort on trying to get the right information out there to the right people.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned information and data, and that's a big part of this program. We realized we weren't very good at getting information out and spreading it. We can show up and share these data points, and every once in a while, someone would be like, "Well, that was good to know. We would have loved to know that." So I'm very happy that that's a big part of the new program that we're launching. We can talk more about that in a little bit. Dana, as a board member, you've had the experience of being part of strategic planning in our organization, and our board has been very clear in our strategy, the areas we need to focus on to grow the game. Can you talk a little bit about those key issues that we're focusing on and maybe some of the local projects we're diving in to help tackle those key issues?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, in terms of, when you hear about our mission that it wants to be tennis for all, what does that really mean? And so in terms of from the board and the organization, and it's been the strategic priority really over the last several years. I mean, obviously COVID came into play at one point, but in terms of the three initiatives that we really focus on is in order to grow the game, number one, you do want to reach the diverse communities, whether it be wheelchair, love serving autism, Special Olympics, that part of it. But then to tie into that, we want it to be a great experience for all. And that's where we seem to look at, where does that come from? The coaching and also the infrastructure. And so in terms of the coaching, what we've learned and what we're trying to advocate for is we've learned that more community coaches are needed, and we've really tackled that hard over the last couple of years. But the other part we've looked at is for these public facilities, there's a difference between a coach teaching on the court and a director of tennis. And that is something that is really needed. So I see those two parts falling into the coaching advocacy. And then in terms of the infrastructure, I mean, courts. That's all we can say. And even the courts that we have, you want to go out on a nice court to play on. You don't want ones with huge cracks and you're having to say, not watch the ball, but look out for that crack. So that is another part of it in terms of how we can take care of our facilities, grow our facilities, and also the coaching side of it. In terms of what we're doing specifically right now, I mean, I happen to be involved with a project in the Tampa Bay area. And here again, taking the time, meeting with the Parks and Rec department, then identifying perhaps three different facilities that we could make an impact on in terms of helping them with the courts, helping with finding a director of tennis, programming. And so, for instance, the USTA has changed their mission statement, and it's about helping build healthy communities around tennis. And so, for instance, these three areas in Hillsborough County, if you looked at them, they're all public facilities and they all have houses around them. They have playgrounds. One of them has a Y next to it, YMCA. Again, what impact can we make in these communities? And then another area that we're looking at right now is the Sarah Vanderberg facility in Zephyr Hills, and really focusing on adaptive play there. And so, again, growing the game with a diverse type player is so important. So, for us, again, this is all new. It's been slow and steady wins the race is our attitude, but we don't shy away from a challenge, and we don't shy away from something new. And so for me, I see where the board has come along with where they've said we really need to focus on this. And then how can this advocacy advisory help with moving that strategic priority farther?
Yeah, I love that context of, how the strategies tie into the actual local projects. I mean, for years, I get these calls from people that are like, I want to build tennis courts at my church, and here's how I would use them. Or the high school courts at my local high school aren't playable, to your point. Like, the kids can't even play on them because they're not kept up. And there might be an opportunity where it's like, hey, this facility is expanding, and how do we add courts? That comes up so often, but also how the courts can be used. And I think those two spaces in the advocacy piece are so important. Is how do we get the information? How do we get the community come together and say, we need to maximize the courts we have, add or refurbish courts with more than 10,000 in the state of Florida. There's more than 10,000 tennis courts in the state of Florida. We know this. That is a huge lift to keep them playable, to make sure they're effectively programmed, and to actually build more, because we have so many people coming to Florida that we need places for them to play. So I love that our board has kind of framed those under sort of, hey, we want everybody to be able to play. We need coaches to actually deliver the programming. We need more tennis courts, and we need to refurbish what we have. And like I said, I would say every call I get falls into one of those buckets, which is kind of exciting, because now we have the ability to do many, many more projects fall into this space. And that actually is a good transition to you, Christine, because you are actually working now with a team, I believe, in South Florida on some additional advocacy projects that would help bring new players into the game, which we feel is very important to our growth. You can't grow if you don't bring new people in, right? This is sort of growth 101. So can you talk a little bit about that part of advocacy, and maybe why it's so important for us to share publicly the benefits of tennis right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the project in South Florida is really interesting. It's kind of modeled after the old school kind of welcome wagon kind of idea, but really focused on not only just welcoming new players to tennis, but also those players who are new to Florida, because we know that there's so many people here who are either moving to Florida or they're snowbirds and they're coming down only at certain times of the year. So one of the aspects we really want to do is that when they come down, that they're easily connected to tennis, that they can join a community. And one important thing, which I think you touched on really, but I think it's really important to really think about as a community, is that, full, vibrant public tennis facilities that are really managed well and effectively are serving their communities. Those courts are safer from conversion or development or all the things that can happen to them. And, I think that when people walk by tennis courts that are maybe underutilized and empty, that's when they start to think, oh, hey, let's convert these over to something different, whatever the sport of the day might be. And I think that it's important for us as a tennis community to recognize that our public facilities are really where a majority of people get their start. Right? That's where they come in when they're beginning or when they're first new to a community. They can connect with a public tennis facility. And this idea is really, how do we do that well? How do we get them introduced to the right people in their tennis community, maybe offer them some fun things to do that are open to everyone, and really invite the whole community in to welcome them. That's the idea. And we're hoping that we can really move the needle in terms of getting people playing more quickly, because we do know how wonderful tennis is and how great it is for you. And we really want everybody to do it. We don't want anybody to be lost when they first come to Florida or when they first get started. So that's kind of the idea behind it. And I'm really super excited about the project. I think it's a good one.
And, just to kind of give you a little more flowers for you and your team, we've shown through Love to Learn, Love to Play how easy it is to actually pick up a tennis racket. It's kind of a myth that it's difficult to learn. And I love that this movie Challengers is out there. And I think Zendaya said this, I mentioned this on another podcast, of how easy it was actually to learn tennis for the movie. And so, we've got to kind of debunk that myth that it's hard to learn, and we have to make it fun. And the Love to Learn, Love to Play program, and now with tennis welcome centers and other things, show that yes, you can be out there playing tennis in no time. And by the way, it's the healthiest sport. It's very good for you physically, which I know we've talked about quite a bit over the last couple of years. But certainly here in Florida, health and wellness and being outside and recreation is big for our culture. So it is something that people come to our state for, and, we're here to serve them. And I think now's the time to kind of say that more.
Definitely.
So I know you both have been very integral in the development of our new advocacy program, and each of you will be leading different pieces of this program as we launch it and build on it going forward. So Dana, I wanted to start with you and see if you could share a little bit more about how the program will better leverage volunteers in different ways to lead our advocacy efforts, and maybe why somebody out there listening to this podcast should sign up to be an advocacy lead.
Well, first of all, like when you talk about no fear of failure, with this is something brand new. It's brand new for me. It's brand new for anyone probably who's out there listening to this podcast. And so kind of going back to some of the things Christine said, that as volunteers and players out there, you are our eyes and ears. No question about it. I mean, we do our best to be as in many different places, but we just can't. And so I do feel like, for instance, I think Christine used the word impact, that person who may shy away some of going, well, what can one person really do? This is going to help you get that notion out of your mind, because I know we'll probably share some about the resources and all that we have, but we are going to have, on our website, a portion of it totally dedicated to this advocacy. And, for me, what is the definition of advocacy? What does that really mean? We'll help you with that. And Laura, as you mentioned, like the research of having numbers. What does tennis really do for a community? We've already talked about the health and wellness, but the economic impact. I mean, all of that we want to provide to our advocates, that type of material to help you. But again, you may be the person who wants to start a team with a couple of people, or you may be someone who wants to join a team. But what I would encourage everyone to do is, we know that areas out there, whether it's programming, that, hey, these public courts are great, but they need more programming, or the refurbishing, or the additional courts. We know that's a big need. But without you signing up and letting us know where these areas are, we're not going to be able to touch on all of them. So for me, from a volunteer standpoint, I just want to assure everyone that we are putting the tools in your hands. You are going to be part of a team. You're not going to be left out there by yourself. I happen to be someone who has a gift of gab. So yeah, I'll talk to a city council and they'll probably give me what I want because they want to get rid of me. But again, that's not for everybody. And we know that. And so we're trying to make it as easy for everyone who wants to get involved and sees a need to step forward and apply to be an advocate, and we will help you every step of the way.
Yeah, I love that. We have so many passionate people out there, from providers to players, et cetera. And I will share just two things I've learned over the years in this space. One is that if you are a local resident and a taxpayer, they do listen to you, and it matters, right? It matters more than me coming to your city 100%, because I'm the outsider. Unless it's here in Orlando where I live, I'm always going to be the outsider. But you as a resident and a taxpayer, you matter a lot. And the second thing we used to say back when I worked in Washington, D.C., is that a lot of times lawmakers and city council members, they may not read your letters, but they count them. And that is an important thing. The more human beings that show up that are passionate about an issue, the more attention it's going to get. And I think having more people that are local, that are able to raise their hand, you mentioned it earlier, sometimes we're too late to the table. Once a development's been approved, there's not much that we can do. So getting people to show up in force and say, we want something different. I've personally seen that change city council meetings. I've seen it go from we're not doing this to we're doing this in the space of an hour because people showed up and said, we're not happy. That really does happen. And so I'm just super excited to say, hey, sign up at any little thing, even if it's just showing up or sending a letter, matters. And if that's what you can do, or if it's just being welcoming to people in your community to talk about the joy of tennis and getting them playing, everybody matters and everybody has a role to play. And we need sort of as many people as we can involved. So I just appreciate you saying that, Dana, that there's something for everyone.
And I'm so glad you brought up about the community, because I had thought about that to myself, again, going back to Riverside Park, that not only did they bring it to our attention, but as you said, we can help with tools, but the city council and the people who make the decisions, they're going to listen to their community. That's who they want to hear from. And it is so important.
And that, so Christine, we talked a little bit about the support that we would provide to people, but you will be leading this effort for us on the staff side of the house, which I'm very, very grateful for. We've worked together for more than 8 years now, and it's just such a joy. You're a great advocate for tennis, and you're also wonderful at providing resources and tools and processes. So maybe you could share a little bit more about the kind of support and resources that our staff team will be able to provide now to these local advocates that are raising their hand and saying, hey, I have this thing that I really need help with.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Absolutely. First and foremost, and I think Dana mentioned it, we have a great new website, right? They can help anyone with their tennis advocacy needs. And that's kind of really going to house all the information, right? All the public information that we're going to share in terms of info on key issues and the research, lots of informative infographics and videos. There'll be advocacy news and really valuable information on programming, like when you need to have information on how to keep your courts filled, funding information, which is always a big thing, right? On how you're going to fund whatever idea or project you have for your community is always a huge question that folks have. And then once people sign on, which I know everybody after hearing this podcast is going to be super excited to get involved, because like you said, it doesn't matter who you are. We need more advocates, right? And it's the number that they count our letters, not necessarily reading all the letters. I love that one. And then once they sign up to be an advocate, right, we're going to be sharing information. Number one, we're going to try to source really good information. So hopefully we'll be able to get out ahead of these things, right? We'll be able to give people guidance and maybe best practices on how to contact officials in the best way, giving them talking points for how to approach subjects in the meetings, of course, the data, and we can help you with providing customizable presentations. We've got these full research reports that really help to narrow in on those aspects of tennis of why it is the greatest sport for anybody to do for their health and wellness. And we'll be hosting lots of workshops and webinars, really trying to build a network of people who feel as passionately as you do, right, about offering tennis in their community, and trying to really just share all those best practices and all the great things that people can do. Like I said in the beginning, it's amazing the difference that one person or small groups of people can make. I think people tend to underestimate their efforts and how much of an impact they can have in their communities. And I just really, I'm passionate about really supporting people in doing this, because sports has made a huge difference in my life. I can't even tell you what a difference that sports, and tennis particularly, has made in my life. And I know that every single person I talk to really has that same story. I just think we need to get out there and share it, because tennis is quiet. We need to get out there and really share how excited we are about all this.
And that the two of you, we've worked together on our Women in Tennis initiative, which you could really look at as a large scale advocacy project to bring more women into coaching, more girls playing. And we're seeing more research and data coming out every day that says, yes, that is very, very important, that girls who play sports have better, social and emotional wellness outcomes. And I think that that's a perfect example of, we didn't do anything really earth-shattering there. We just put a group of passionate people together and said, hey, what do we want to do to advocate for this and to make this happen more? And now here we are in a position where we're starting to see some real meaningful change because we were vocal about it. Prior to that, it wasn't that we weren't doing these things, we just weren't super vocal about it and encouraging others. So to me, that's one of the best practice scenarios that we've had over the years, and the two of you have been willing to show up and advocate and do great work in that space. So imagine what we could do in all of these other spaces that we operate in. And that is, so this is my last question for you both. Looking ahead to 2025, so we're already midpoint in 2024. What do you see as successful advocacy for Florida tennis? And then what last advice maybe would you give our audience about how they can get more involved? And Christine, I'll start this time with you.
Okay, sure. So success for me, I think, really goes back to making progress on our goals, right? Of reaching more players, finding more coaches, and having more courts to support the sport that we love. I mean, really it comes down to the basics of that, and really, people becoming more vocal about the sport that we love, so that we don't lose any ground, so that we can keep this for the next generations, because it's so, so important. And I think the thing that I would say in terms of how people can get more involved, of course, I'm advocating for you to sign up on our website, to come be an advocate with us. I think we will support you, and as the listeners and can attest, right? USTA Florida really is here to support this effort. I personally am excited to support the effort, and I really think that you can become an advocate in your community. So I'm hoping lots of people sign up on the website, and I'm excited for the opportunity to support this group.
Thank you, Christine. Dina, what would you see as successful advocacy for Florida tennis as we, go into 2025, and what final advice would you give to our audience about getting involved?
I mean, in terms of success, what I would love to see is that we have so many advocate groups across the state that size does not matter. I know the signs from Morgan and Morgan say that, but it doesn't to us. I mean, truly, it can be, as you mentioned, some high school courts. It can be a bigger public facility that is so thriving, but they need more courts and a developer is right at their back door. That type of thing, that in other words, we have all of these different groups going from the Panhandle down to Miami of different advocates working on different projects. And so that would probably, if I had to say what would look like success, is that we have so many coming in that Christine's hair's on fire, and that's all right because she's ready for it. And in terms of any, because again, I wanted to bring up that is part of the website too, that you introduce us to an area where you want to advocate for, not us telling you, you telling us. And that too is a part of taking ownership as well. And in terms of what I would say to people out there, I mean, we've all talked about sport and sport in general. I mean, certainly there's now so much research on that sport, whether it's a child, an adult, a family, it is so important. And when I think about, it does break my heart if I walk into a restaurant and I see the two parents and the two kids all on their phone, where I'm like, you could be out on a tennis court having, dialoguing and talking and having a good time and then go out to dinner. So I am a true believer. I, drove every Saturday morning with my dad and we played tennis together, and the drive there and the drive back, there was a lot that was talked about during that time, much less on the court, and we'd come home tired and we had a good workout, but we also had a good time together. And so I think for volunteers, if that is the type of atmosphere that you want to advocate for, then you need to come to us because we're here for you.
And that is that. You both have been such great advocates for tennis. I know you said, oh, this is new to me, but it's really not. I feel like you both have just done a wonderful job. You've advocated in so many ways. And I would just share with the audience, certainly we're going to post links to all of the resources that we have. And this is just the beginning. So, you're going to see some resources and information available on our website, which will be linked to this pod. And we're going to add to that. So over the rest of this year, the issues, ideas, and thoughts that you share with us about how we can better support your advocacy efforts are going to help us expand and build this program so that we can have this running list of amazing projects in the hopper for 2025, whether it's court improvements, coaching, getting more players on the court. We want them all. We want to hear them all. And our team is certainly here to serve all of you and get you to be successful in whatever your local tennis growth goals are. So with that, I just want to thank the two of you for giving so much of your time and energy to this project and for being with me today to help introduce it to the broader world. This is the first time I think we've had a program like this in Florida, in USTA Florida, and I'm just very excited to see where it goes. So thank you both very much.
Thank
My
you,
pleasure.
Laura.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Here to Serve podcast. We're going to take a break from Here to Serve for the summer because we're making space for a very special video series featuring our USTA Florida Tennis Trail. The Tennis Trail commemorates 75 years of Florida tennis, and our marketing team will be out and about spotlighting different spots on the trail. There'll also be a fun contest on social media where you can win a great prize for visiting the tennis trail and sharing. Check out USTAFlorida.com for more details on the tennis trail, and stay tuned this summer for some awesome featured videos with our tennis trail locations and our providers. We'll be back in September with new episodes of the Here to Serve podcast. And you can find all episodes of the pod, including topics, guests, and dates, at USTAFlorida.com/here to serve.